Imagine this, the sterile chill of a hospital room. Not one of joy, but of shattering betrayal. Elena Petrova, 9 months pregnant, her body aching, her heart already in pieces, lies just rooms away. But her husband, the charismatic billionaire Julian Vance, isn't by her side. He's in another wing, a different kind of celebration unfolding. Beside him, radiant and triumphant, stands Sophia Laurent, his mistress. And in Julian's hand, a pen hovering over a birth certificate. His name etching itself onto another child's life, while the silent sobs of his wife echo in the forgotten corners of his conscience. This is the story of a vow broken, a family fractured, and a fortune built on a foundation of lies. Stay with us as we unravel the truth behind. The scent of antiseptic and roses fought a strange battle in the VIP suite of the Azure Bay Maternity Clinic. Roses because Julian Vance spared no expense, even for the birth of his mistress's child. Antiseptic because beneath the veneer of luxury, this was still a hospital, a place of raw, unfiltered life. Sophia Laurent, her dark hair artfully tousled against the pristine white pillows, gave a radiant, if slightly weary, smile. Her newborn son, swaddled in cashmere, lay in a state-of-the-art bassinet beside her. Julian Vance, tall, impeccably dressed, in a Brioni suit that probably cost more than the average nurse's annual salary, stood by the window, looking out over the glittering cityscape of Miami. He was the founder of Vance Innovations, a tech empire that had catapulted him into the stratosphere of the ultra-rich. "He's perfect, isn't he, Julian?" Sophia murmured, her voice husky. "He has your eyes, I think." Julian turned, a practiced smile on his handsome face. "He's a strong boy, Sophia. You did well." He moved closer, his gaze lingering on the infant. Alexander Laurent Vance, a good strong name. A nurse, Ms. Albright, a woman whose expression remained studiously neutral despite years of witnessing every conceivable human drama, entered with a clipboard. "Mr. Vance, Ms. Laurent. Just the birth registration forms to complete." Julian took the offered pen, a custom Mont Blanc. Sophia watched him, her eyes gleaming. This was it, the culmination of years of careful planning, of sidelong glances at society events, of clandestine meetings in five-star hotels from Paris to Tokyo. This child was her anchor, her claim. As Julian's pen moved, signing his name with a flourish officially acknowledging paternity, neither of them heard the muffled sob from a room 3 doors down. There, in a standard though still private room, the kind his company's excellent insurance covered, but not the kind he personally frequented, lay Elena Petrova Vance. Her own due date was less than a week away. A sympathetic junior nurse, a young woman named Maria, had just broken the news, her voice trembling. She'd seen Julian Vance striding into the VIP wing with Ms. Laurent, had heard the cooing, and had seen the champagne being discreetly delivered. She knew Mrs. Vance from her prenatal appointments, a quiet, kind woman with sad eyes. Maria, against protocol, but driven by a fierce sense of justice, had felt compelled to tell her. "Mrs. Vance, I don't know how to say this." Maria had stammered, twisting her apron. "Mr. Vance, he's here, in the VIP wing, with another woman. She just had a baby boy. He's signing the birth certificate." Elena's world, already fractured, splintered into a million irreparable pieces. The physical pain of her late-stage pregnancy, the Braxton Hicks contractions that had been her constant companions for days, was nothing compared to the agony lancing through her soul. She had known, of course, about Sophia. The whispers had been deafening in their social circle for months. The late nights Julian attributed to critical business, the scent of unfamiliar perfume on his shirts, the emotional Grand Canyon that had opened between them. She had confronted him, tears streaming down her face, her swollen belly a testament to the vows he was trampling. Julian, ever the master manipulator, had been smooth dismissive. "Elena, darling, you're hormonal, stressed. Sophia is a business associate, a friend, nothing more. You're letting gossip get to you. Focus on our baby, on us." He'd gaslighted her so effectively, so consistently, that she'd almost started to doubt her own sanity. Almost. But the evidence had become too blatant. A hotel receipt carelessly left in a pocket, a jeweled earring found in his car, his increasing coldness towards her. Now this, the ultimate public betrayal. Signing his name to another woman's child, while she, his wife, the mother of his soon-to-be-born legitimate heir, lay abandoned, a forgotten footnote in his triumphant narrative. The tears streamed silently down Elena's face, soaking the starched hospital pillow. She didn't scream, didn't rage. A chilling numbness had enveloped her. The love she had once felt for Julian, a radiant, all-consuming fire, had died, leaving behind only cold, hard ash. In its place, something else was stirring. A flicker of resolve, born from the deepest despair. She thought of her parents, Mikhail and Anya Petrova, hard-working immigrants who had sacrificed everything for her to have a better life, to get the education that had led her to meet Julian at a university gala where she was a promising architecture student and he was a rising tech star. They had been so proud. What would they think now? The name Alexander Laurent Vance echoed in her mind. A name that should have been a source of joy, now a symbol of her humiliation. As Julian Vance walked out of Sophia Laurent's suite, his phone buzzed. It was his PA. "Sir, Mrs. Vance's obstetrician, Dr. Ramirez, called. She's been admitted. Early labor." Julian sighed, a flicker of annoyance crossing his face. The timing was inconvenient. "All right, tell Dr. Ramirez I'm on my way. Inform security to keep the paparazzi away from her wing. And from this one." He glanced back at Sophia's door, then strode towards the elevators, the weight of two families, two futures resting on his custom-made Italian leather shoes. He was Julian Vance. He could manage anything. Or so he believed. The corridors of Azure Bay Maternity Clinic seemed to stretch endlessly as Julian made his way from the opulent VIP wing to the more modest private rooms. The shift in atmosphere was palpable, less champagne, more hushed anxiety. When he finally reached Elena's room, Dr. Ramirez, a woman whose calm demeanor usually reassured him, met him with a cool, appraising look. "Julian," she said, her voice devoid of its usual warmth. "Eleanor is distressed. Her blood pressure is elevated. We need to keep her calm." Of course," Julian replied, a mask of concern slipping easily into place. He walked into the room. Eleanor lay pale and still, her eyes closed. The only sign of her turmoil was the tear track on her cheek and the way her fingers were clenched white around the bedsheet. "Elena, my love," he began, his voice oozing feigned tenderness. "I just heard. I came as quickly as I could." Her eyes snapped open, and for a moment the raw pain in them made him flinch internally. But there was something else too, a coldness he hadn't seen before. "Did you?" she asked, her voice flat, devoid of accusation, which was somehow more unsettling. "Or did your other commitments delay you?" Julian feigned confusion. "Other commitments, darling? My only commitment right now is to you and our baby." He reached for her hand, but she pulled it away. "Save it, Julian," she said, her voice gaining a sliver of strength. Nurse Maria was kind enough to inform me of your other celebration. Congratulations on Alexander Laurent Vance. Julian felt a surge of anger towards the interfering nurse, but his face remained smooth. Elena, that's a misunderstanding. Sophia needed support, and as a friend, a bitter laugh escaped Elena's lips. A friend whose child you just legitimized with your signature while your pregnant wife is down the hall. What a noble friend you are, Julian. Dr. Ramirez cleared her throat. Perhaps this discussion can wait. Elena needs to focus on the delivery. But Elena wasn't done. No, doctor. I think this discussion is long overdue. Julian, I want you to know that I know everything. The apartment you bought for her in the Bayside Towers, the little trips to St. Bart's on the company jet, the Vance Foundation donations that mysteriously ended up funding her art gallery, Gallery Sophia. Julian was momentarily stunned. He'd underestimated her. He'd thought her quiet, perhaps a little naive. He'd forgotten the sharp intellect that had once drawn him to her. Elena, you're overwrought, sir, he tried, but his usual confidence wavered. Am I... She pushed herself up slightly. Or am I finally seeing clearly the only thing I'm overwrought about is the fact that my child is about to be born into this charade? Just then, a sharp pain made her gasp, her hand flying to her belly. Dr. Ramirez was instantly at her side. All right, Elena, breathe. Julian, perhaps it's best if you wait outside for a bit. Relief warred with unease as Julian stepped out. The situation was messier than he'd anticipated. He'd envisioned a quiet divorce after their child was born, a generous settlement for Elena, and a seamless transition to his new life with Sophia and their son. He hadn't counted on Elena finding her spine at the 11th hour. Hours later, after a grueling labor that Elena endured with a stoicism that unnerved Julian more than tears would have, their daughter was born. Maya Anya Vance, small, perfect, with a tuft of dark hair like Eleanor's and, ironically, Julian's determined chin. When they placed Maya in Elena's arms, a profound, fierce love, unlike anything she had ever known, washed over her, momentarily eclipsing the pain of Julian's betrayal. This tiny, vulnerable creature was hers, and she would protect her. Julian, observing the scene, felt a pang of something he couldn't quite name. Guilt, perhaps, or maybe just the inconvenience of a more complicated future. He put on his best, doting father face. She's beautiful, Elena, just like her mother. Elena didn't look at him. Her world had narrowed to the tiny face nestled in her arms. Dr. Ramirez, she said, her voice quiet but firm. I'd like to make some calls. To my lawyer, for one. Julian's head snapped up. Lawyer Elena, now is not the time. On the contrary, Julian, she said, finally meeting his gaze, her eyes like chips of ice. There's never been a better time. Get out. Elena, get out. Each word was a frozen shard. And tell your friend that I hope she enjoys the view from Bayside Towers. It's about to get a lot less comfortable. Julian, accustomed to commanding rooms and people, found himself momentarily speechless. He saw Dr. Ramirez looking at him with disapproval, a nurse hovering protectively near Elena. He was for once not in control. With a tight nod, he turned and left his mind racing. This wasn't just a marital spat anymore. This was war. Back in her VIP suite, Sophia Laurent was preening. She'd seen Julian's brief, strained visit to Elena's wing from her window. She felt a surge of triumph. The wife was clearly hysterical emotional. Julian would soon tire of that drama. He'd gravitate back to her, to the peace and adoration she offered to their son. Her phone buzzed. It was a text from a number she didn't recognize. Enjoying the champagne, Sophia, hope it doesn't leave a bitter taste. Some signatures aren't as binding as you think, especially when they're built on deceit. Tick-tock? Sophia frowned. Who would send such a thing? A prank or something more? A shiver unrelated to the air conditioning ran down her spine. She looked at her son, Alexander, sleeping peacefully. He was her ticket, her security. No one would take that away from her. Meanwhile, Elena, cradling Maya, made her first call. Not to a divorce lawyer, not yet, but to a name whispered to her months ago by a concerned acquaintance who had seen the storm clouds gathering around the Vances. Mr. Marcus Thorne. My name is Elena Vance. I believe you're an investigator. I need your help. My husband is Julian Vance, and I think he's not just unfaithful. I think he might be a monster. Marcus Thorne was a name that rarely appeared in society pages, but was frequently whispered in their aftermath. A former investigative journalist with a bloodhound's tenacity and a ghost's discretion, he now ran a boutique private investigation firm, Thorne and Associates, specializing in the kind of high-stakes, high-net-worth cases that required surgical precision and an impervious moral compass, or at least one that could be flexibly aimed. He listened patiently on the other end of the line, as Elena, her voice still raw with emotion, but underscored by a new, steely determination, recounted her story. She omitted nothing. The slow decay of her marriage, Julian's increasingly blatant affair with Sophia Laurent, the whispers of financial irregularities she'd dismissed as stress-induced paranoia, and the final devastating blow of the birth certificate. Mrs. Vance, Thorne said, when she finally paused, his voice a calm baritone. This is a distressing situation. What exactly are you hoping to achieve by engaging my services? Elena held Maya closer, the warmth of her tiny body a grounding force. I want the truth, Mr. Thorne. All of it. I suspect Sophia Laurent is not just some opportunistic mistress. There's a ruthlessness to her, a calculation that chills me. And Julian, he's built an empire. I want to know if that empire is built on anything solid or if it's as rotten as our marriage. Mostly, her voice cracked. I need to protect my daughter. If I'm to fight him, and I will, I need ammunition. I need to know what I'm up against. I understand, Thorne replied. My fees are considerable, Mrs. Vance. My father, Mikhail Petrova, was a master carpenter, Mr. Thorne. He taught me the value of good foundations. He also left me a small but significant inheritance money Julian doesn't know the full extent of. He always called it my just-in-case fund. I think this qualifies as just in case. A rare hint of a smile touched Thorne's lips. Very well, Mrs. Vance. We can begin immediately. I'll need any information you have, names, dates, access to any shared accounts or documents. You can ethically provide details about Julian's inner circle, his routines, anything you can think of regarding Miss Laurent. Over the next few days, while Elena recovered physically from childbirth, a clandestine operation began. She'd sneak moments on a burner phone Thorne had arranged to be delivered, feeding him snippets of information. Her friend, Dr. Lena Hansen, a respected art historian who had always harbored suspicions about Sophia's meteoric rise in the gallery world, also became an invaluable, if unwitting, source. Lena had crossed paths with Sophia professionally and found her knowledge of art surprisingly superficial for someone running a gallery like Gallery Sophia, known for its exclusive, high-priced contemporary pieces. Julian, in the meantime, was feeling the pressure. Elena, had returned to their palatial waterfront mansion in Golden Beach, but it was a cold homecoming. She moved into a guest wing, communicating with him only through her newly hired formidable divorce attorney, a shark named Beatrice Beer Holloway, whose reputation preceded her. Beer had immediately filed for exclusive use of the marital home for Elena and Maya, citing emotional distress and Julian's blatant infidelity. "This is ridiculous," Julian had raged at his own lawyer, the slick, unflappable Arthur Jenkins of Jenkins Finch and Associates. "She can't just kick me out of my own house." "Technically, Mr. Vance," Arthur had replied smoothly, "with a newborn and given the public nature of your other relationship, the courts may lean sympathetically towards Mrs. Vance's request for the time being. We need to manage the optics." Optics. Julian hated that word. He was used to creating his own reality. He visited Sophia and Alexander at the Bayside Towers apartment, a lavish penthouse he'd purchased under a shell corporation. Sophia was becoming increasingly demanding, sensing her moment. "When are you going to deal with Elena Julian?" she'd asked, stroking baby Alexander's cheek. "This limbo is untenable. We need to be a proper family. Alexander needs his father properly and publicly." She'd also shown him the anonymous threatening text message. "Someone is trying to intimidate me." Julian had dismissed the text. "Probably just some jealous socialite, my dear. Don't worry about it." But privately, it irked him. It was another loose thread, another sign that his carefully constructed world was fraying at the edges. Thorne's investigation, meanwhile, was beginning to yield fruit. He was meticulous. He started with Sophia Laurent. Her official biography painted her as a Parisian ingenue, educated in art history at the Sorbonne, who had come to Miami and charmed her way into the art scene. Thorne's dig into her past, however, revealed cracks in that facade. Her real name was Sophie Dubois, and while she had spent time in Paris, it wasn't at the Sorbonne, but rather working in a series of low-level jobs, including a stint at a nightclub with a less-than-stellar reputation near the Champs-Élysées. There was a gap of 2 years in her late teens that was completely unaccounted for. "Interesting," Thorne mused to his associate, a tech whiz named Chloe. "Our Parisian princess might have a few skeletons in her armoire." He then turned his attention to Vance Innovations. Julian's company was a behemoth specializing in proprietary AI algorithms for financial markets and data security. It was mostly privately held, with Julian owning a controlling stake. Thorne began by looking at the flow of money, particularly the Vance Foundation, which Julian used for his philanthropic endeavors, and as Elena suspected, for other less altruistic purposes. Chloe, using her skills to navigate the labyrinth of offshore accounts and shell corporations that often accompanied vast fortunes, flagged a series of transactions from the Vance Foundation to entities connected to Gallery Sophia. The amounts were substantial, disguised as grants for artistic development or cultural exchange programs. "It's more than just funding a mistress's hobby, Mrs. Vance," Thorne reported to Elena during one of their discreet calls. "The sums are disproportionate to the gallery's legitimate turnover. It looks less like patronage and more like a very sophisticated form of money movement." Elena felt a chill. "Money laundering? It's a possibility we're exploring," Thorne said carefully. "There are also unusually large payments to a consulting firm based in the Cayman Islands, Viridian Consulting. It has all the hallmarks of a shell, and it was set up shortly after Miss Laurent, or Miss Dubois, appeared on the scene in Miami." A new, horrifying thought began to form in Elena's mind. What if Sophia wasn't just a gold digger? What if she was involved in something far more dangerous and Julian was complicit, or worse, being played? the anonymous text Sophia had received suddenly took on a more sinister light. Some signatures aren't as binding as you think, especially when they're built on deceit. Whose deceit? Sophia's, Julian's. Both one evening, as Eleanor rocked Maya to sleep, her eyes fell on a small, antique wooden box her father had carved for her. It contained her most precious mementos. Inside, beneath old letters and photographs, was a small, velvet pouch, her just-in-case fund, but there was something else her father had given her, a love for puzzles, for seeing how things fit together. She remembered Julian's early days, his obsessive secrecy around certain aspects of his business, his casual dismissal of her questions. She'd chalked it up to entrepreneurial focus. Now she wondered. She thought about Sophia's 2 missing years. Paris, nightclubs. What happened during that time? And how did a woman with such a dubious past reinvent herself so completely and ensnare a man like Julian Vance, a man who, for all his faults, was no fool? A particular memory surfaced. A charity ball years ago. Julian had been talking to a shadowy European businessman, Nikolai Volkov, a man rumored to have ties to organized crime. Sophia had been there that night, not yet Julian's mistress, but definitely in his orbit, introduced as an art consultant. Elena had felt a prickle of unease about Volkov then. Could there be a connection? She relayed this to Thorne. Nikolai Volkov. Yes, his name has come up in relation to other discreet inquiries. Thorne said, his voice guarded. This adds another layer, Mrs. Vance, a potentially dangerous one. The threads were not just unraveling. They were starting to form a terrifying tapestry. Elena knew she was in deeper than she could have ever imagined. But with Maya's soft breath against her neck, her resolve hardened. She would see this through, no matter the cost. Marcus Thorne, a man who prided himself on his unflappability, felt a distinct thrill of the hunt. The name Nikolai Volkov was a significant escalation. Volkov wasn't just some generic shady businessman, he was a player in the murky world of international illicit finance and influence peddling, with rumored connections that stretched from Eastern Europe to the art markets of London and New York. If Sophia Laurent, and by extension Julian Vance, were tangled with Volkov, this case was far more explosive than a billionaire's messy divorce. Thorne decided to leverage his old contacts in European law enforcement. While Chloe dug deeper into Viridian Consulting and its transactions with Vance Innovations, Thorne put out feelers about Sophie Dubois and any known associates of Volkov who matched her description or timeline. Meanwhile, Elena was living in a gilded prison. Julian, furious at being barred from his own home and under pressure from Sophia, had instructed Arthur Jenkins to play hardball. Motions were filed demanding Elena undergo psychiatric evaluation, citing her erratic behavior and delusional accusations. He was trying to paint her as an unstable, vindictive woman, unfit to make decisions about their child or his finances. "He's trying to break me, B," Elena said, her voice trembling during a meeting with her lawyer. Baby Maya gurgled softly in her carrier. Bea Holloway, a woman whose sharp suits were as formidable as her courtroom presence, patted Elena's hand, a rare gesture of softness. "Of course he is, my dear. It's the classic playbook of a powerful man cornered. But we're not going to let him. Thorne is making progress, and you, Elena, are stronger than Julian gives you credit for." Elena found an unexpected source of strength in the routine of caring for Maya. The late-night feedings, the soft lullabies, the fierce, primal love she felt for her daughter, it all coalesced into an unshakable resolve. She also started quietly documenting everything. Julian's past comments, his financial dealings she'd been privy to, names of his associates. She was no longer just a grieving wife. She was an archivist of her own life, searching for clues. The breakthrough came from Paris. Thorne's contact, an old friend from Interpol named Inspector Dubois, no relation, ironically, to Sophia's original surname, sent a cryptic message regarding your Sophie Dubois inquiry and Volkov. Look into the unsolved 2015 disappearance of one Jean-Luc Moreau, an art appraiser and authenticator from Lyon. Moreau was last seen in Paris after a meeting with individuals loosely connected to Volkov's circle. He specialized in Russian avant-garde. Also, a young woman matching Dubois's description was known to be an associate of Moreau around that time. Went by the name Lily, then she vanished. Thorne felt the pieces click. Jean-Luc Moreau, he murmured. Lily. Sophia's 2 missing years. He presented this to Elena. Moreau was known to be meticulous, but also rumored to be in debt. If he was involved in authenticating, or perhaps mis-authenticating art, for Volkov and Lily was his protégé or accomplice. Elena's blood ran cold. You think Sophia was involved in something that led to his disappearance? It's a strong possibility, Thorne said gravely. If Moreau became a liability, Volkov is not known for his leniency, and if Lily was smart, she'd disappear and reinvent herself, perhaps with a little nest egg or some compromising information to ensure her silence and future. Suddenly, Sophia Laurent wasn't just a calculating mistress. She was potentially a woman with a dark, dangerous past, possibly a witness or even a participant in serious crimes. And Julian had made her the mother of his child, signed that birth certificate. The anonymous text Sophia received now seemed less like a general threat and more like a targeted message from someone who knew. Signatures built on deceit. Could Moreau still be alive? Or someone close to him seeking revenge or justice? Back at Vance Innovations, Julian was feeling the heat from another direction. A routine internal audit, something he usually rubber-stamped, had flagged irregularities in the Foundation's disbursements to Viridian Consulting. His CFO, a normally placid man named David Chen, had requested an urgent meeting. Julian, Chen said, his face pale. These payments to Viridian. The documentation is thin, very thin, and the amounts are significant. We're talking millions funneled out over the last 2 years, coinciding almost exactly with your association with Miss Laurent. Julian fixed Chen with a steely glare. Are you accusing me of something, David? No, of course not, Julian. Chen stammered, visibly intimidated. But if the IRS, or heaven forbid the SEC, were to look into this, it could be problematic. Very problematic, especially with your divorce proceedings. A disgruntled spouse can open all sorts of Pandora's boxes. Julian's mind raced. He had used Viridian as a conduit, a way to move money discreetly, some for Sophia's gallery, to give it an air of legitimacy, some for other investments ventures he preferred to keep off Vance Innovations' main books. He'd always been meticulous, but perhaps Sophia's demands, her lavish lifestyle, had made him careless. He dismissed Chen with a curt, "I'll handle it." But a seed of doubt was planted. Was Sophia more than just expensive? Was she a liability? That evening, Julian went to the Bayside Towers penthouse. Sophia was in a foul mood. The nanny you hired is incompetent, and this apartment, Julian, while lovely, is beginning to feel like a gilded cage. When are we going to announce ourselves to the world? When will Alexander carry your name with pride, not in whispers? Sophia, Julian said, his voice tight. We need to talk about finances. specifically the gallery and some other arrangements. He brought up Viridian Consulting. A flicker of something unreadable crossed Sophia's face before she smoothed it over. Darling, you know I leave the boring financial details to you. I trust your judgment implicitly. She ran a perfectly manicured finger down his lapel. Don't I always take good care of your investments? Her eyes, usually so adoring, held a glint that he now found unsettling. It was the same glint he'd seen when she first maneuvered her way into his life, a predatory focus that he'd mistaken for ambition and passion. He left the penthouse feeling more disturbed than ever. The foundations of his empire, his life felt like they were shifting beneath him. Elena, meanwhile, received an encrypted file from Thorne. It was a grainy photograph, years old, taken outside a Paris cafe. A younger, harder-looking Sophia, Lily, was seated with a distinguished older man, Jean-Luc Moreau. And standing in the background, half obscured by a newspaper, was another man whose face made Elena gasp. It was Stéphane Julien's enigmatic head of security, a man who had been with Julien for years, his past shrouded in mystery. Julien had always referred to him as his most loyal asset. Stéphane in Paris near Moreau, and the woman who would become Sophia Laurent years before she officially entered Julien's life. Thorne, Elena, breathed into the burner phone. Stéphane, Julien's head of security. He was there. He knows her from Paris. The implications were staggering. Was Stefan Volkov's man placed with Julien, or was Julien himself more deeply enmeshed with Volkov than she could ever have imagined, with Sophia being a deliberate plant from the start? The betrayal wasn't just personal anymore. It was a complex web of deceit, with Julien, Sophia, and possibly dangerous international figures all entangled. And Elena, with baby Maya, was right in the middle of it. Just then, her personal cell phone rang. It was Julien. His voice was strained. Elena, we need to talk, urgently, not with lawyers, just you and me. About Sophia, about everything. Was this a trap? Or had the pressure finally gotten to him? Elena agreed to meet Julien, but on her terms, a neutral public location, the sprawling botanical gardens of Fairchild Tropical Garden, a place with too many witnesses for overt threats. She also informed B. Holloway and Marcus Thorne, who arranged for discreet surveillance. Thorne, intrigued by Stefan's connection, was particularly keen. The humid Miami air hung heavy as Elena waited on a secluded bench near the orchid exhibit, Maya asleep in her stroller. Julien arrived looking haggard. The impeccable sheen he usually wore was gone, replaced by dark circles under his eyes and a tension that radiated off him. Elena, he began, his voice raspy, thank you for meeting me. What do you want, Julien? She asked, her tone devoid of warmth. He sighed, running a hand through his usually perfect hair. This whole thing with Sophia, it's more complicated than you think, than I thought. Complicated? Elena raised an eyebrow. Or criminal? Julien flinched. I made some mistakes, misjudgments. Sophia, she's not who I thought she was. He recounted his growing unease, the financial irregularities Chen had pointed out, Sophia's increasing demands, and a veiled threat she'd made when he'd questioned her about Viridian Consulting and some of its more opaque dealings. She hinted that she has leverage, information that could damage me, the company. Information about your dealings with Nikolai Volkov, perhaps? Elena watched his face carefully. Julien went pale. How do you know that name? I know a lot of things, Julien. I know Sophia used to be Sophie Dubois, also known as Lily. I know she was an associate of Jean-Luc Moreau, an art appraiser who vanished in Paris. I know your head of security. Stefan was also in Paris around that time, near them both. Julian looked like he'd been physically struck. He sank onto the bench. Stefan, he whispered. He recommended her, said she was a brilliant art consultant who could help the foundation. He vetted her. The pieces were falling into a horrifying pattern. Stefan hadn't just been Julian's security chief. He had likely been Volkov's man all along, subtly manipulating Julian, introducing Sophia into his life as a beautiful, intelligent Trojan horse. Sophia's role was to bind Julian to Volkov, likely through a combination of seduction, financial entanglement, and eventually blackmail. The child Alexander was the ultimate insurance policy. Julian, Elena said, her voice surprisingly steady. You've been played, royally, by Sophia, by Stefan, and almost certainly by Volkov. That money flowing through the Vance Foundation and Viridian Consulting, where was it really going? What was it really for? He looked down, shame and fear warring on his face. Some of it was to legitimize certain artifacts, artworks. Volkov deals in antiquities sometimes of questionable provenance. Sophia, with her gallery, was meant to be a clean channel. I thought it was just aggressive business, bending rules, not breaking laws. And now, Julian admitted, his voice barely a whisper, I think Volkov owns a part of me. And Sophia, she's his enforcer. She hinted that if I don't cooperate, if I don't continue to allow my company to be used, evidence of certain transactions could find its way to the authorities, or worse, to people who don't bother with authorities. Elena felt a cold dread, but also a strange kind of vindication. Her instincts had been right. This was bigger than infidelity. And the baby Julian Alexander, was he part of the plan too? Julian looked utterly defeated. I don't know. I thought I wanted a son. She knew that. He looked at Maya, sleeping peacefully. I was a fool. Yes, you were, Elena agreed, and a cruel one. But right now, we have a mutual problem. Volkov and Sophia. They won't stop. They'll bleed you dry, destroy your company, and if we fight them, they could endanger Maya. Suddenly, a new figure emerged from the path, Sophia Laurent. Her expression was glacial. Behind her, a respectful distance away, was Stefan. What a touching family reunion, Sophia said, her voice dripping sarcasm. Julian, darling, I thought we had an understanding. No more clandestine meetings with the hysterical wife. Stefan moved slightly, his presence a silent threat. Thorne's men, hidden amongst the tourists, and Flora tensed. Sophia, Julian said, standing up, trying to regain some semblance of control. This has gone too far. On the contrary, Julian, Sophia purred, stepping closer. It's only just beginning. You see, Elena, your husband made promises, not just to me, but to people far more influential, people who don't take kindly to broken agreements. She gestured vaguely towards Stefan. Some signatures, like the one on my son's birth certificate, are binding. Others, her eyes flicked to Julian, can be enforced. Elena stood her ground. And what about your signature, Sophia? Or should I say, Lily? The one you forged on Jean-Luc Moreau's authentication papers before he conveniently disappeared. Sophia's smile faltered for a split second. Stefan took a step forward. That's a wild accusation. Sophia recovered quickly. You're grasping at straws. Am I? Elena pressed. Mr. Thorne has been very thorough. Interpol is also very interested in Jean-Luc Moreau's fate, and anyone connected to him, especially anyone connected to Nikolai Volkov. At the mention of Interpol and Volkov, In the same breath, Stefan's eyes narrowed. Sophia's composure finally cracked a flicker of fear in her eyes. "You wouldn't dare," Sophia hissed. "You'd bring Julian down with us. His company, his reputation, everything." "Perhaps," Eleanor said coolly, "but some things are more important than reputations and companies. My daughter's safety for one. And a lifetime of being blackmailed and controlled is no life at all. Is it, Julian?" Julian looked from Sophia's venomous face to Elena's resolute one. He saw the trap. He was in a trap, largely of his own making, but one Sophia and Stefan had expertly sprung. "What do you propose, Elena?" he asked, his voice heavy with resignation. Before Elena could answer, Thorne stepped out from behind a large banyan tree, flanked by two of his operatives. Simultaneously, other figures, B. Holloway, and to everyone's surprise, David Chen, Julian's CFO, emerged from different points. Chen was holding a briefcase. "Actually, Mr. Vance," Thorne said calmly, "Mrs. Vance isn't proposing anything. She's merely facilitating." "Mr. Chen, I believe you have something for us." David Chen, looking terrified but determined, stepped forward. "Julian, I couldn't let this happen. I've made copies of all transactions related to Viridian Consulting and the Foundation's disbursements to Miss Laurent's gallery. I've also documented irregularities that point to significant money laundering with clear links back to initial fund sources connected with Mr. Volkov's known associates. I've already spoken to the SEC and the FBI." Sophia gasped. Stefan tensed his hand, subtly moving inside his jacket. "Don't even think about it, Stefan," Thorne warned, his eyes like steel. "My colleagues here are armed, and this entire park is under surveillance. More importantly, Mr. Volkov wouldn't appreciate a public shootout involving his operative. Bad for his kind of business." Stefan froze, his face a mask of cold fury. Sophia looked wildly from Julian to Eleanor to Thorne. "You can't prove anything. This is all circumstantial." "Oh, I think we can be," Holloway interjected, stepping forward with a folder. "We have sworn affidavits, bank records, and soon we'll have testimony. Perhaps even from Jean-Luc Moreau's family, who have been searching for answers for years. And then there's the matter of paternity, Ms. Laurent." Sophia's eyes widened. "What are you talking about?" B smiled thinly. "While Mr. Vance was foolish enough to sign a birth certificate under duress and emotional manipulation, a simple DNA test, which we will be petitioning the court for, will reveal the truth about Alexander's parentage. My sources suggest Mr. Vance might not be the only candidate for fatherhood. Perhaps one of Mr. Volkov's more senior associates might have a claim that would certainly complicate your leverage, wouldn't it?" This was a bombshell B had been saving. Thorne's team had uncovered whispers during their investigation into Sophia's Parisian days, rumors of an older, powerful protector within Volkov's syndicate. If Alexander wasn't Julian's son, Sophia's entire hold over Julian would crumble. Sophia stared aghast. The carefully constructed world she'd built was collapsing around her. Her primary leverage, her son's paternity, was now in question. Julian looked at Sophia with utter contempt. Was any of it real? Sophia laughed, a harsh, broken sound. "Real? What's real, Julian? The money. The power, that's all that matters. You taught me that." Stefan, seeing the situation was untenable, gave a curt nod to Sophia. "We should leave." "Not so fast," Thorne said. As if on cue, two uniformed police officers, accompanied by a plainclothes detective, approached the group. "Sophia Laurent, a.k.a. Sophie Dubois, Stefan Hauer," the detective asked. "We need you to come with us to answer some questions regarding international financial crimes and the disappearance of Jean-Luc Moreau." Sophia's face crumpled. Stefan remained impassive, but did not resist as they were escorted away. Julian watched them go, a broken man. He turned to Eleanor, his eyes filled with a toxic mix of despair and a dawning, horrifying understanding of the abyss he had skirted. "Elena, save it, Julian," Elena said, her voice weary but firm. She looked at Maya, still sleeping, oblivious to the storm that had just broken. "You have a lot to answer for, to the authorities, to your shareholders, and to your daughter." The fight was far from over. There would be legal battles, public humiliation, and the long, arduous process of untangling Julian's company from Volkov's influence. But as Elena pushed Maya's stroller away from the scene, leaving Julian to face the consequences of his actions, she felt a sliver of peace. She had faced the monster, and for today, she had won. The path ahead was uncertain, but she would walk it with her head held high for herself and for Maya. The downfall of Julian Vance and the exposure of Sophia Laurent's schemes sent shockwaves through Miami's elite circles and the wider business world. Headlines screamed of the billionaire betrayal, the mistress, the mob, and the money. Vance Innovations' stock plummeted, and the board of directors, spurred by David Chen's courageous whistleblowing and the mounting evidence, swiftly moved to oust Julian as CEO. The legal battles were complex and grueling. Sophia Laurent, facing charges of fraud, conspiracy, and potential involvement in Moreau's disappearance, tried to cut a deal offering to testify against Volkov's network in exchange for leniency. Stefan Hauer, ever the stoic operative, remained silent, his fate tied to the shadowy organization he served. Nikolai Volkov himself, of course, remained untouchable in his foreign enclaves, though his reputation suffered a significant blow, and several of his known financial channels were disrupted. The DNA test B. Holloway had threatened proved to be a pivotal revelation. Alexander Laurent was not Julian Vance's biological son. The father was indeed a high-ranking, much older associate of Volkov, a man Sophia had been involved with long before she set her sights on Julian. This discovery shattered Sophia's last vestiges of power over Julian and painted her as an even more manipulative figure, using a child as a pawn in a much larger, more dangerous game. The court nullified Julian's name on Alexander's birth certificate. The child, an innocent in the whole affair, was placed into temporary foster care, his future uncertain, a tragic consequence of his mother's ambition. Julian Vance faced his own reckoning. He was charged with financial misconduct, money laundering, and severe breaches of fiduciary duty. While his high-powered lawyers managed to keep him out of prison, his career was in ruins, his fortune significantly diminished by legal fees, fines, and the divorce settlement with Eleanor. He became a pariah, a cautionary tale whispered at cocktail parties. The empire he had built with such arrogance crumbled not with a bang, but with the slow, inexorable grind of justice and public disgrace. For Elena, life began anew, albeit scarred. The divorce was finalized, and she secured a settlement that, while not the vast fortune Julian once controlled, was more than enough to ensure her and Maya's future. More importantly, she had her freedom and her dignity. She sold the palatial Golden Beach mansion, finding its opulence tainted by too many bitter memories. She bought a more modest, beautiful home, further up the coast, a place with light and air, and a garden where Maya could play. She reconnected with her passion for architecture, starting small, designing sustainable, community-focused projects. Her work, infused with a newfound resilience and empathy, began to gain recognition. She found solace and strength in her parents, Mikhail and Anya, who rallied around her with unwavering love and support, doting on their granddaughter. Her friend, Dr. Lena Hansen, remained a steadfast ally. Marcus Thorne, his job done, faded back into the discreet world he inhabited, but not before expressing his admiration for Elena's courage. David Chen, after a period of intense scrutiny, was lauded for his integrity and went on to a respected position in a financial oversight body. Years passed. Maya grew into a bright, inquisitive child, thankfully untouched by the darkness that had preceded her birth. Elena made sure her world was filled with love, honesty, and the simple joys her own parents had taught her to value. She rarely spoke of Julian, and when she did, it was with a detached sorrow rather than bitterness. One sunny afternoon, Elena was sketching in her home studio, the scent of frangipani drifting in from the garden where Maya was laughing, playing with her grandparents. Her phone rang. It was an unknown number. Hesitantly, she answered. "Elena?" The voice was hesitant, gravelly, almost unrecognizable. It was Julian. She hadn't spoken to him in years, not since the final court proceedings. "Julian," she replied, her voice calm. I know I have no right," he began, "but I saw an article about your new community project. It's wonderful. You always were talented." There was a pause. "I just wanted to say, I'm sorry, Elena, for everything, for the pain I caused you, Maya, for the man I became. There's not a day that goes by that I don't regret it all." Elena listened, a complex swirl of emotions passing through her. The wounds were deep, but time and her own strength had healed them into scars rather than open sores. "Thank you for saying that, Julian," she said softly. "I hope you find some peace." She didn't offer forgiveness, not explicitly. Some things couldn't be unsaid or undone. But in her voice there was no hatred, only a quiet acceptance of the past and a focus on the future. She ended the call, a chapter finally truly closed. She looked out at Maya, her heart swelling. The betrayal had been devastating, the fight arduous, but she had emerged not just as a survivor, but as a woman reborn, stronger, wiser, and dedicated to building a life of meaning and integrity for herself and her daughter. The shadows of the past had finally given way to a brighter, more authentic dawn. And so Elena Vance, once the silent crying wife, found her voice, her strength, and her justice. Julian's empire, built on deceit, crumbled, and Sophia's manipulative web ensnared herself. This story is a stark reminder that wealth and power cannot shield one from the consequences of betrayal, and that even in the darkest moments, the courage of one individual can bring truth to light. What did you think of Elena's journey? Could you have imagined such a complex web of deceit spun by Sophia and her shadowy associates? What does true justice look like in a situation like this? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If this story of resilience, betrayal, and ultimate vindication moved you, please hit that like button. Share it with someone who appreciates a real-life drama. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more compelling narratives. Click that notification bell so you never miss an update. Thank you for watching.